from West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by the following.
AARP West Virginia, your ally for real possibilities in the Mountain State. Online at aarp.org/WV. West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission, working to double the degrees produced annually to meet workforce demands and grow West Virginia's economy. Learn more at wvhepc.edu. The W. Page Pitt School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Marshall University, providing hands-on education in advertising, public relations, and journalism across all media platforms.
At the Legislature today, delegates take on reporting requirements for fundraising during the legislative session, while senators look at changes to statewide hunting laws. We dig a little bit deeper into the Senate's plan to overhaul the state tax code. And on Veterans Visibility Day, we'll highlight a program making a difference for West Virginia's military men and women. Those stories and more coming up on the Legislature today. Good evening, I'm Ashton Mara. The Senate Select Committee on Tax Reform has yet to take up a bill that would make major changes to the state's tax structure. But that hasn't stopped chatter about the bill from filling the halls of the state capitol. On Friday, we heard from an economist and a policy analyst who shared their thoughts and some concerns about the bill and its implementation. Now we meet the bill's lead sponsor. Senator Robert Karns is a Republican from Upshur County. He chairs that Senate Select Committee on Tax Reform. Senator, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's start with the bill itself. In case maybe some members of our audience haven't heard, what does the bill do?
Well, what we do is we start off by changing the structure of the sales tax as well as eliminating the income tax. The structural changes in the sales tax are to broaden the base. We eliminate almost all of the exemptions in the sales tax with the goal that those changes in the sales tax replace the revenue stream that we're giving up with the income tax. And those are really the big pieces of the bill. There's smaller pieces in there, and as you're well aware, any bill that's introduced is rarely what passes out of the Senate, let alone the Senate, the House, and past the governor's desk. So the big pieces are like that. The small pieces can move around a little bit.
That's true. It doesn't always make it out the way that it started, but right now the bill says an increase from 6% to 8%, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And it also, I know saying a food tax and a sales tax on food, you're basically talking about the same thing, but it does implement that sales tax on food once again?
Restores the sales tax on food as it currently stands, yeah.
Okay. So what's the reason behind this bill? Why would you like to see this change happen?
Well, I've actually had an opportunity to travel and work all over the United States, and so I've seen the other states firsthand that don't have an income tax. A lot of people are familiar with Florida, or they may be familiar with Texas. They may be less familiar with Tennessee or Nevada or Washington State or Alaska and so on. What we see consistently in those states, and again, I've seen it firsthand, is that they're doing better than we're doing. Of course, a lot of states are, but these states are by large measure doing better than the national average, not just better than West Virginia. And so I think if we're going to make serious changes to make our business climate more friendly to job creation and growth, we should go for the top, so to speak, and for the best possible solution. And I think eliminating the personal income tax, followed by the elimination of the corporate net income tax, is a way that's proven to work.
So on Friday, John Deskins and Ted Bettner joined us, and they also presented before your committee on Friday afternoon. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the concerns, or they termed it advice they had for you all in the committee. Ted Bettner is with the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy, and he's concerned about the impact that this change might have on low-income West Virginians. He calls it a regressive bill and says that basically those at the bottom are going to have to pay more, while those at the top get kind of a tax break. What do you think about that statement?
Well, I don't think it's actually accurate, and I'm sure Ted makes his best effort at it, but the calculations that I've seen run against a current tax code says that a typical family of four, perhaps making $30,000 a year, with this change will see a significant change to the good because they'll no longer be paying personal income tax. And currently that's probably around $700 to $800 for that family. And so first they get a tax break on their personal income tax, yes, followed by a small tax increase on the sales tax. However, the sales tax increase probably amounts to perhaps $250, maybe $300 in total cost to them. So they save $700, $800 on income tax while paying, and so what they wind up with is a net $400 or $500 more disposable income.
So Mr. Bettner would also like to see the passage of an earned income tax credit, which is basically, it's something we already have at the federal level. It's a tax credit for families who make a certain income. We've talked about that in the past here in West Virginia. I think it's been introduced several of the past legislative sessions. Is there any chance your committee might look at something like that?
I think we actually may. And again, because this is not designed or intended to be something that it makes it more difficult for the poor in West Virginia, particularly the working poor. But I would also say that another major concern is that we have a lot of people in West Virginia that are on a fixed income. So not only are we at least in consideration of an earned income tax credit, but we've also created the concept of what we call fixed income tax credit, which would only be usable or applicable to persons who are 65 and older and on a limited income. And so it operates similar to an earned income tax credit, but currently earned income tax credits do not apply to people except on earned income as opposed to pensions and Social Security and so on.
Another concern, one of our guests on Friday, John Deskins, who's with the Bureau for Business and Economic Research at WVU, he had a concern about evasion. Basically, people who already provide services in the state, services that are exempt, like attorneys or accountants, evading paying the tax on those services. And he warned you all to be cautious of the revenue estimates when you get those back. How do you feel about the possibility of people evading the taxes and the state not making ends meet?
Right. I think tax evasion is as old as taxes. So I don't think that's necessarily anything new. What I would say is we currently have people who come into West Virginia from outside the state of West Virginia and do work, whether they're attorneys or whether they're building some of our highways even, and they don't necessarily always pay state income tax either. And they're liable for it. Whatever work you do in the state of West Virginia, you're liable for income tax on that, and yet they don't always pay that. And in fact, I think we have a significant number of people who don't pay that income tax. So we're looking at perhaps giving up one form of evasion in favor of another. However, obviously we don't want people to evade taxes, because the more people who evade taxes, the higher the overall tax burden has to be on the people who pay taxes. So I think reasonable measures can be put in place to try to dampen the enthusiasm for tax evasion. But it's always going to be there.
I would love to hear more about those, but I'm sorry we're out of time. Senator Robert Karns, Chair of the Select Committee on Tax Reform, thank you so much.
Thank you.
During his State of the State address earlier this month, Governor Justice asked for hundreds of millions of dollars in tax increases to help balance the state's budget. But he also put forward a plan to create nearly $3 billion in highway and infrastructure investment funds. His tour to promote that plan began on Sunday in southern West Virginia with an event right on the asphalt of the incomplete Coalfields Expressway. Jesse Wright reports.
I don't like me to say that.
Governor Justice kicked off his Save Our State tour Sunday in Slab Fork in Raleigh County. The small West Virginia town is along the Coalfields Expressway, a stretch of 4-lane highway projected to run from Beckley to Wise County, Virginia, through Raleigh, Wyoming, and McDowell counties in West Virginia. Construction began in 2000, and 17 years later, it's still a work in progress.
Look out there. Just look. How long have we been doing this? Forever, haven't we? Forever.
The governor's office estimates 200 people attended the Sunday event to hear Justice talk about his plan to invest some $2.8 billion in construction in West Virginia. During his State of the State address, Justice explained he'll ask lawmakers to increase the state's gasoline tax by 10 cents, raise the division of motor vehicle licensing fees from $30 to $50, and increase the tolls on the West Virginia Turnpike for out-of-state drivers by $1 to create a stream of revenue that can then be bonded. A bond is like a long-term loan from Wall Street that the state would pay back with those dedicated sources of revenue. The proposal would have to be approved by West Virginia voters. Justice said Sunday that while he knows the proposal hurts West Virginians in the short term, it could open up economic opportunities in the future. By his estimates, the plan would create 48,000 construction jobs in the process.
If you'll go with me I'll build the damn road. And I'll build it now.
But Justice's plan doesn't end with new construction.
But in addition to that, we're going to, through this effort, be able to put significantly more money into repairing our existing roads. We'll go with this.
A bond would pay for new highway miles, like the completion of the Coalfields Expressway, freeing up revenue in the state's road fund to pay for maintenance. Justice's Department of Transportation Secretary Tom Smith says there's been a history of chronic underinvestment in the state's roadways. A report from the national nonprofit TRIP, released last week, says those deficiencies are costing West Virginia drivers an additional $1.4 billion each year in vehicle maintenance, the costs of accidents, and wasted gas and time lost due to congestion.
Our number of bridges, deficient bridges, are getting worse. The number of roads that we view as in bad condition, getting worse. The number of fatalities are going up. So this chronic underinvestment in highways is just having a terrible impact on our transportation infrastructure, but even more importantly on our economy.
Richard Browning leads the Coalfields Expressway Authority and says work on the project began 27 years ago with the passage of a resolution in the state legislature. Browning says he's worked since then with governors who have faced the challenge of funding the multi-million-dollar project. But he calls Justice's plan refreshing and hopes lawmakers and citizens alike will follow it.
Being a former legislator, I know what the situation is with the budget in the state now is, and I'm hopeful that they will listen to him and help get us out of this hole.
Justice says it will take $54 million to complete the paving and drainage on the Coalfields Expressway from Slab Fork to Mullins in Wyoming County, and another $100 million to complete it from Mullins into McDowell County. For the Legislature Today, I'm Jesse Wright.
Hundreds of pieces of legislation have already been introduced in the House of Delegates and are making their way through the legislative process. Liz McCormick details 2 bills approved by the chamber today that strengthen laws impacting legislators and the average citizen alike.
First up for a vote in the House today was House Bill 2303. Littering on public or private property in West Virginia is a misdemeanor, but the bill increases the fines and community service hours associated with it. Fines in the bill are subject to the amount of trash a person disposes of improperly and are decided by a judge. They range from $100 to $10,000. The maximum amount of community service hours also increases in the bill to 200 hours. The minimum community service penalty is 8 hours. Democratic Delegate Justin Markham stood in support of the bill on the House floor Monday, citing problems in his district in Mingo County.
When we have an open dump that's developed recently, it's on the front page of the Williamson Daily News. And ladies and gentlemen, this is truly a sad sight to see. We have tourists from all over America, three continents that were there last year at this trailhead. And to see the devastating effect and the look on their face when they see these dumps, I mean, it's sad.
Markham says this bill will help keep trails in southern West Virginia as well as all over the state clean and encourage more tourism. 3 other delegates stood and spoke in favor of the bill, but 2 delegates questioned the constitutionality of the high increase in penalties, including Republican Delegate Pat McGeehan of Hancock County.
Say a Happy Meal bag from McDonald's blows out your window, you don't have intent, it lands on the roadside. Potentially, a judge would have the latitude to punish you up to 100 hours of community service?
Yes.
With no intent?
He would, I'm sure a judge would take that into consideration if you had a good excuse for it, but under the law, you would be subject to at least 8 hours of community service and $100 fine or both.
100 hours of community service?
No, 8 to 100. It's a range.
The bill ultimately passed 95-3. Delegate Rupi Phillips, the only independent member of the state legislature, is the lead sponsor of the littering bill. He says he feels the penalties are reasonable, but wishes they were even stronger.
If I was in committee, I would have stood stronger on a stiffer bottom dollar than where they went. But like I said, we got a bill out and it raised the community service. I mean, to go from just a few hours to possible 100 hours or possible 200 hours. I mean, just whatever. It's just, like I said, let's just make West Virginia shine.
Phillips, like Delegate Markham, says the state's trail systems need to be protected.
The Hatfield-McCoy Trail System is by far the best in the whole country. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best in the world. They do a tremendous job. And the leaders there have told me the number one thing they hear from out-of-staters or people from other countries, with as beautiful as our streams are and as beautiful as our mountains are, why does people litter? And that hits home.
House Bill 2319 also passed out of the chamber today. The bill requires candidates to disclose to the Secretary of State's office any donations they receive within 5 days of a fundraising event during the legislative session. The bill passed without debate, 98-0. For the Legislature Today, I'm Liz McCormick in the House.
Over the past few years, West Virginia voters have decided on a county-by-county basis whether to allow hunting on Sundays, and many counties have approved the measure. A bill now being considered in the state Senate would make those provisions uniform across counties, though, allowing hunting and trapping on private lands. Senate Bill 335 is a pretty straightforward piece of legislation. It would allow hunting and trapping on Sundays on private land anywhere in West Virginia. Republican Senator Mark Maynard chairs the Chamber's Committee on Natural Resources. He's also the bill's lead sponsor and says he supports it for a pretty basic reason.
The working man really only has one day to hunt in the counties that don't allow it.
33 counties in West Virginia already allow Sunday hunting, largely as a result of voter-approved initiatives. According to the Sunday Hunting Coalition, a national advocacy group made up of several sporting groups like the U.S. Sportsmen's Alliance and the Congressional Sportsman Foundation, only 11 states restrict hunting on Sundays in some form, including West Virginia. West Virginia's bill is backed by the National Rifle Association and the West Virginia Citizens Defense League, along with gun manufacturers and sellers from across the country. But Maynard says the bill also has the support of both the Division of Natural Resources, the state agency that oversees hunting and fishing regulations, and the Division of Tourism.
It would just give tourists another day to come to our state, sometimes just for the weekend. And if somebody comes here on like a weekend vacation, they only have one day to hunt. And I think it would really help the state in that regard.
Democratic Senator Glenn Jeffries is also a sponsor of the bill. Calling himself an avid outdoorsman, Jeffries says he agrees that it could have a potential economic impact.
When people come in to hunt, they'll go out and purchase items, I believe that the state has the potential to generate revenue from it.
A fiscal note from the Division of Natural Resources anticipates an additional $600,000 in revenue in 2018 should the bill take effect. Maynard says there have been concerns expressed about allowing Sunday hunting on public lands, but this bill focuses on private property, although he says he'd like to see that change in the future. The Senate Committee on Natural Resources voted to advance the bill today to the Chamber's Judiciary Committee. We go to Wood County tonight to meet 4 more members of the West Virginia Legislature in this edition of Meet Your Lawmakers.
Mike Azinger is a first-term member of the West Virginia Senate. He represents the 3rd Senatorial District. Azinger previously served as a member of the House of Delegates, elected in 2014. He's a Republican from Wood County. Frank Deem is also a Republican from Wood County. He represents the state's 10th House District, elected to his current post in 2014. Deem served 12 years as a member of the House after his first election in 1954, then 32 years as a member of the West Virginia Senate beginning in 1964. Deem is the oldest member of the West Virginia Legislature. John Kelly represents the state's 10th House of Delegates district. A Republican, Delegate Kelly is from Wood County. He was elected in 2014. Kelly was previously a member of the Parkersburg City Council and served in the U.S. Air Force. Vernon Criss is a Republican representing the state's 10th House of Delegates district. He was elected in 2016. Criss was previously appointed to the House in 1987 and won re-election, serving until 1991.
In a state where more men and women choose to serve in the military than any other per capita, Veterans Visibility Day is an important one for many West Virginia lawmakers. Tonight we're going to hear more about just one of the many programs that help West Virginia veterans from James McCormick. He's the state's Veteran to Agriculture Program Director through the West Virginia Department of Agriculture. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Ashton. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Let's start with the program itself. For some of our viewers who might not know, what do you all do?
Well, what we do is we recruit veterans and their family members to learn about agriculture, and we basically give them something to do and something to be, and an alternative at maybe a different type of job.
So. This started through a piece of legislation that passed in 2014, and you started your program without any funding, and you've grown from 0 to how many members now?
We have just over 300 members that are active in the program, but I would say that we have probably dealt with well over 500 since we've been conducting the classes. For instance, we had a beekeeping class a couple of weeks ago. We had 150 that came to one class on Saturday and 87 that came to the class on Sunday that we had never seen or met before. So it's making a huge impact.
Well, let's talk about some of those programs, because beekeeping is one of them, but you guys also do other things as well.
Well, we do traditional farming. We also work a lot with high tunnel technology, where we use extended season methods so that you can grow crops into the winter. Aquaponics, hydroponics, pretty much anything that has to do with agriculture. We also do with agriculture support. Which means, we get into even some folks that are learning about tractor repair and different things that you don't think about normally. Veterinarians, my goodness, we encourage our veterans to maximize their GI Bill, and we would love to see them go on and become veterinarians and come back to the state and help us out with that.
And I just want to make sure that we're clear. When you say 300 active members, that means you have more than 300 veterans who own their own business in agriculture.
That's correct. We just called the Secretary of State's office and we got those official numbers, and basically what he told us is that we have just over 300 veterans that own a business that is related somehow to agriculture since 2013, which would put it right about the time that we started working with the program. Of course, we've known a lot of businesses, small businesses, have started up, and we've got some people that are making $250,000, and we've got some people that are making a couple of $1,000s a year. But every one of them that are involved and engaged, they have found a better purpose in life, and they just are doing so wonderful, and we could do so much more.
Well, tell me a little bit about your personal story, about why this program is so important to you.
Well, retired from the Army, and after 22 years, I served in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and also served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. A lot of time in combat. I got 26 months in combat. That was my combat time. And it wasn't time in a fob. It was time out on the road. It was time amongst the enemy, primarily. I saw a lot of people injured, saw a lot of people killed, got wounded myself, and didn't realize how injured I was, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And coming back, I kind of tried to go back to my roots. What am I going to do? So I bought a 15-acre parcel of land in 2009 and just basically started to hunt it, and then I started farming it, and then I got involved with bamboo and sorghum and some different things. And before you know it, I started a business called Raising Cane Farms and started to bring out veterans. Many of them transferred over to this program. And over the course of until about 2012, I had worked with several hundred veterans, and you don't realize what an impact that you have until, a guy like Woody Williams comes up and tells you, that you've been nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor Society's Citizen Service Before Self Award, and they only award 3 of those a year, and I thought, I'm never going to get it. And sure enough, I was awarded that in 2012 and went to Washington, D.C., met 65 Medal of Honor recipients. It was just a tremendous honor. So we've just kind of carried that over, and we're just keeping the push forward with it. So that's my personal story. It means a lot for me to be able to pass that along to people. I'm still a soldier, and I'm still a company commander. I still feel like I have an obligation to my fellow veterans. So I want to be someone that they can come to for help.
James McCormick with the Veterans to Agriculture Program, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Tomorrow on our show, we're joined by the chairs of the House and Senate Transportation Committees to discuss funding for the state's roadways and their reactions to Governor Jim Justice's plan to raise taxes and fees for a road bond. Delegate Marty Gerhardt and Senator Greg Boso tomorrow on the Legislature Today. And remember, you can watch the Legislature at work every day on the West Virginia channel. Tune in at 11 a.m. tomorrow to watch the House and Senate floor sessions live, or catch them as they're rebroadcast each evening at 7 p.m. That's on the West Virginia channel. This has been the Legislature Today. I'm Ashton Mara. Thanks for joining us.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by the following.
AARP West Virginia, your ally for real possibilities in the Mountain State. Online at aarp.org/WV. West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission, working to double the degrees produced annually to meet workforce demands and grow West Virginia's economy. Learn more at wvhepc.edu. The W. Page Pitt School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Marshall University, providing hands-on education in advertising, public relations, and journalism across all media platforms. From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.